Warning. Listen to this story at your own risk. This story is completely fictional, but it may disturb someone. Thank you and enjoy listening. They say it shouldn't exist. It was never supposed to. The cloud is a mistake, a wound, a being that fell not from grace but from something even greater. The border of eternity itself. The old legend says it began when an angel, a true one, vast and brilliant, peered too far beyond the edges of heaven. Maybe it was curious. Maybe it was defiant. Whatever the reason, the angel looked where it wasn't meant to look, and it saw something it wasn't meant to see. A void that stretched into infinity, cold and silent, dotted with faint whispers of forgotten souls. The angel fell. Not down but sideways, tumbling through cracks in the divine order, burning and twisting as it went. By the time it reached Earth, it was no longer an angel, but something far worse. A fragmented thing, a mist of broken wings, shattered light, and something darker that clung to it from the void. And that's when the angel cloud began to hunger. The previous murders at Pinewood. The angel cloud didn't arrive in Pinewood as a herald of death. It came quietly, like a breath of summer air, settling over the Wilson farm on a cool, humid night. Farmer Jacob Wilson was the first to see it, a faint golden glow hovering just above his fields. At first he thought it was swamp gas, then a trick of the moonlight. But when he stepped outside to get a better look, he felt its presence, warm, inviting, and so impossibly lonely that it almost broke his heart. By the next morning, the glow had grown. It shimmered faintly above the farmhouse, casting a golden light over the fields. Mary Wilson, Jacob's wife, who was very religious, saw it as a miracle, a blessing. "It's an angel," she told Jacob, clutching her rosary. "It's here to save us." Jacob didn't believe her, but he kept his doubts to himself. Mary had needed saving for years, ever since their youngest son David disappeared in the woods. They'd searched for days, only to find him hanging from a tree, his face frozen in a twisted, silent scream. Mary had never been the same, but the cloud wasn't a blessing. That night, Jacob woke to find Mary standing in the field, bathed in the cloud's golden light. Her face was wet with tears, her arms outstretched as though reaching for an embrace. "Mary!" Jacob shouted, running toward her. "It's so warm," she whispered, smiling. "It feels like heaven." Before Jacob could stop her, she stepped into the cloud. Her body dissolved like ash, her face appearing moments later within the golden mist, her eyes wide and unblinking, her mouth open in a silent scream. The next morning, the town was in chaos. The cloud had grown, its edges pulsing faintly as it hovered over the fields. People gathered to see it, whispering prayers and crossing themselves, but when they looked too long, they swore they saw faces in the mist. Mary Wilson, Peter Holcomb, even Jacob, who had vanished hours after his wife. Then the voices began. At first they were faint, a soft melodic hum drifting on the wind. No one could make out the words, but the tone was gentle, inviting. But the more people listened, the more the voices changed. "It doesn't hurt," they whispered over and over again. "Come closer. It doesn't hurt." The Holcomb boy was the first to listen. Peter was only 6, too young to understand why his parents were terrified, why they'd nailed boards over the windows and locked every door. He woke in the middle of the night and heard the voice calling his name, soft and sweet, like his mother's lullabies. When they found him the next morning, he was standing at the edge of the Wilson field, his hands stretched toward the glowing mist. He was smiling, tears streaming down his face. "They said it doesn't hurt," Peter whispered as his parents pulled him away. That night, Peter disappeared. The next morning, his face was in the cloud. As the cloud grew, the people of Pinewood began to break. The whispers were louder now, filling their homes even with the doors and windows shut. Some people took to sleeping in their basements, stuffing cotton in their ears, but it didn't matter. The voice was in their heads. A farmer named Harold Bennett was the first to snap. He killed his wife with a carving knife, saying she was unworthy, that the cloud had told him she would taint the offering. Others followed. By the second week, the town was a graveyard. Families fled in the night, only to turn back days later, drawn by dreams of golden light and whispers of salvation. They left their cars abandoned on the side of the road and walked the rest of the way back, their faces blank, their bodies moving as if pulled by invisible strings. The pastor, Father McAllister, was the last to leave. He stood in the Wilson field with his Bible, shouting prayers into the mist, demanding that God banish the thing back to whatever hell it had crawled from. But the cloud only grew brighter. The whispers became a deafening roar, drowning out the pastor's voice. His congregation watched from the hill above as he dropped to his knees, clutching his head, tears streaming down his face. "It's not heaven," he sobbed. "It's not hell. It's what's left when they forget you exist." Then he walked into the mist and disappeared. What it wants. The angel cloud isn't an angel. It never was. The old folks say it's a soul that escaped from hell, a thing too broken to return to heaven. They say it doesn't want salvation. It wants company. The more souls it takes, the brighter it grows, the louder its whispers become. And it doesn't stop. It can't stop. Some say it's still out there, hovering over the Wilson farm waiting. Others say it moves, drifting from town to town, pulling the lonely and the desperate into its golden wings. If you wander too close to Pinewood, you might feel it, the soft hum in the back of your mind, the faint glow on the horizon. If you listen too long, you'll hear the whispers, and if you're foolish enough to follow them, you'll see it. Bright, golden, beautiful. And the cloud is called the angel cloud.